If there is one thing for which I will never forgive Peter Jackson, it is that he ruined Faramir. Look at me funny when I say that Aragorn is, like, sure, the hottest, but Faramir is a close second place. And it took me a while to figure out why people were looking at me funny when I said that. And then I realized that the movies ruined Faramir. And I was thinking about book Faramir. Movie Faramir is like, whatever. But book Faramir is hot. And, like, in a lot of ways, he's the best of Boromir, who was meant to be the best of men. Only he doesn't have a weird superiority / eldest son complex. Let's look at the books. When we first meet Faramir, it is at the same point in the story. Frodo and Sam are traveling with Gollum and they're, trying to get into Mordor, whatever. And when they first meet him, he, like, pulls the same shenanigans. He, like, there's the whole thing with the arrows and the kidnapping and whatever. But the reason why Faramir insists on Frodo and Sam staying with his company is as follows. Now you, Frodo and Samwise, will come with me and my guards. You cannot go along the road southwards if that was your purpose. It will be unsafe for some days, and always more closely watched after this affray than it had been yet. And you cannot, I think, go far today in any case, for you are weary and so are we. We are going now to a secret place we have, somewhat less than 10 miles from here. The orcs and spies of the enemy have not found it yet, and if they did, we could hold it long against even many. There we may lie up and rest a while, and you with us. His goal is to take care of them. His goal is to protect them, because they've also by this point already had the conversation about Boromir. And in that one, it goes the same way where it's, were you a friend of Boromir? And Frodo says, well, for my part, I was. But Faramir, in that exchange, says, I would not snare even an orc with a falsehood. Faramir's, like, very intent on honesty. And as they're having this conversation, Sam asks, well, how did you know that Boromir was even dead? Like, how do we know that you're not a spy? And Faramir's response is, you asked how do I know that the son of Denethor is dead? Tidings of death have many wings. Night oft brings news to near kindred. Boromir was my brother. And he, asked them, do you remember of a special mark that he carried? And Frodo goes, yes, he had a horn. And Faramir acknowledges that it is the Horn of Gondor. And it has a very specific tone to it. And Faramir gets, like, weird visions in usually his dreams, sometimes of Numenor, sometimes of things happening in faraway lands. And in this particular dream, he hears the blowing of the Horn of Gondor from the north, and he says that it seemed but dim, as if it were but an echo in the mind, a boding of ill we thought it, my father and I, for no tidings had we heard of Boromir since he went away, and no watcher on our borders had seen him pass. And on the third night after another, and stranger thing befell me, and he sees in his mind Boromir's body floating down the Anduin with a broken sword on his knee and many wounds upon him. And he knows that the only thing missing is the horn, and then the horn eventually washes up on the shore and it's broken. And Frodo goes, yeah, that was Boromir. And they have a whole exchange about how they're both grieving him and how they both wish that they could have done better by him. Because Frodo is learning for the first time that Boromir is dead. And here's the thing. Faramir isn't stupid. The lore about the ring has sort of been floating around Gondor. It has not been kept as secret as Gandalf certainly would have liked. But where Boromir sees it as potentially a tool that could be used to win the war, could be taken home to Gondor, Faramir's immediate response is, what in truth this thing is, I cannot yet guess, but some heirloom of power and peril it must be, a fell weapon perchance devised by the Dark Lord. If it were a thing that gave advantage in battle, I can well believe that Boromir, the proud and fearless, often rash, ever anxious for the victory of Minas Tirith, might desire such a thing and be allured by it. Alas that he ever went on that errand, I should have been chosen by my father and the elders. And up until this point, this reflects what Faramir says in the movies, where he says that it's a chance for Faramir to prove his quality, and that, if he has the ring, he can go take home glory for Gondor. But Book Faramir does something that no other man across the entire series does. His immediate response, looking at the ring, he can see it around Frodo's neck. He says, but fear no more, I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway. Not were Minas Tirith falling in ruin and I alone could save her, so using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory. No, I do not wish for such triumphs, Frodo, son of Drogo. And then he says, for myself, I would see the white tree and flower again in the courts of kings, and the silver crown return, and Minas Tirith in peace. He knows perfectly well that a ring designed by Sauron can only be used by Sauron. In so many ways, Faramir is the more honest brother. Faramir has the better sense of what glory really means, because glory in the world of Lord of the Rings usually necessitates violence. And even though he's capable, he is leading a battalion, He doesn't want it. He wants a time of peace. He's not in it for the personal glory. And that's reflected again in Return of the King. You get this whole really cute exchange with him and Éowyn, where they have both fought, they have both proved their quality, they have both accomplished a great deal of valor, and they're both basically being held hostage in the House of Healers because they're both way too injured to do anything else. And he asks Éowyn, like, hey, I still have some power in the city, what can I do for you? If it's in my power, I will do it. And she says, I do not desire healing, I wish to ride to war like my brother Éomer, or better like Theoden the king, for he died and has both honor and peace. And keep in mind, Éowyn has just defeated the Witch King of Angmar. And Faramir says, it is too late, lady, to follow the captains, even if you had the strength. But death in battle may come to us all yet, willing or unwilling. You will be better prepared to face it in your own manner. You and I, we must endure with patience the hours of the healing, or the hours of waiting in the House of Healing. And they sit there and they're just trying to figure out what they even want out of life now that there is potentially a time of peace. And it's the first time that either of them really has a chance to hope for a time of peace. These two have both lived their whole lives in a time of war. And finally, Éowyn asks him, well, what do you want? And he says, Éowyn of Rohan, I would say to you that you are beautiful. In the valleys of our hills there are flowers fair and bright, and maidens fairer still, but neither flower nor lady have I seen till now in Gondor so lovely and so sorrowful. It may be that only a few days are left ere darkness falls upon our world, because even though there's hope on the horizon, they know that they're probably going to lose. And he says, when it comes, I hope to face it steadily, but it would ease my heart if while the sun yet shines, I could see you still. For you and I have both passed under the wings of the shadow, and the same hand drew us back. And she says, hey, I am not your salvation. Look not to me for healing. I am a shield maiden, and my hand is ungentle. But at this point, they're both beginning to realize that they have some very cute feelings for each other. And finally, as they realize that the battle's going on like longer than they thought it would, maybe there's hope. Maybe the force that has gone to the Black Gate can hold the enemy back. And they look out over the hills, and Faramir says, it reminds me of Numenor. And Éowyn goes, what? Numenor is like a fictional fantasy land. And Faramir says, yes, of the great land of Westerness that foundered, and of the great dark wave climbing over the green lands and above the hills, coming on darkness unescapable. I often dream of it. And Éowyn asks, do you think that the darkness is coming? And Faramir says, no. I do not know what is happening. The reason of my waking mind tells me that great evil has befallen, and we stand at the end of days. But all my limbs are light, and a hope and joy are come to me that no reason can deny. Éowyn, White Lady of Rohan, in this hour I do not believe that any darkness will endure. But Éowyn doesn't really want to accept the romantic relationship because she's like, well, I don't want any man's pity, and also, like, I am not going to be a cute, gentle housewife. And Faramir immediately goes, yeah, I know you had a crush on Aragorn. And Éowyn tries to pass it off, but, like, Faramir's correct. And he says, do not scorn pity that is the gift of a gentle heart, but I do not offer you my pity. For you are a lady high and valiant, and have won yourself renown that shall not be forgotten. And you are a lady beautiful, and I love you. Once I pitied your sorrow, but now were you sorrowless, still I would love you. And it's really cute. And it brings home the point again that it is, in this series, it is the men who do not seek personal valor who end up with the greatest reward of all, which is to live a happy and peaceful life with the people that they love. All of which is to say, book Faramir is hot and super underrated, and the movies ruin him. Damn you, Peter Jackson.